You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
Hello there, Richard Dolan, in a conversation with our very own Frank Stronach. This week, we're going to be talking specifically about tariffs and what has gone on and what geopolitical events are now unfolding as a result. As we know, the US President Donald J. Trump, the sitting 47th president, has just levied his tariff war. What has occurred now is a litany of retaliatory tariffs that have not only been lobbed and or logged by Canada, but every country in the world. To talk about this a little bit more and to find out what he thinks about not just the tariffs, but why the tariffs are the most incredible catalyst for us to not just reframe and reimagine the Canadian economic future, but why this just might be the greatest opportunity to save ourselves here in Canada. Good morning, Frank. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
As always, I love starting conversations with you with what's in the news. And as we've seen reports, and I'm sure you're no stranger to it, these tariffs is all the rage. I mean, you cannot get by any newscast, any news channel without hearing something about tariffs, the taxation of trade, of goods coming into a country. And for a man like you who founded Magna, who was in the very business of not just importing and exporting goods, but exporting your finished goods, auto parts, all around the world, and in particular, US, our greatest ally, and to this point, and I do mean this point, our greatest trade partner, things have changed. What do you think has changed as a result of tariffs for the average Canadian, Frank?
Well, basically, Donald Trump has been elected the President of the United States. So his first duty is to make sure how is the United States run, for the benefit of its citizens. So you can't really blame him that he took a very major look and statement where he said, well, the United States has been subsidizing pretty well all the countries in the world over the years, and this will come to an end. So I want to make sure that we have a lot of employment for U.S. citizens, and that the income or the living standards will improve for the American citizens. That's, I think, a reasonable thing here, right? I think what we failed to recognize is we had the attitude, if we do that, we do the same thing here, right? Okay, that it could have been diffused, right? Especially with Canada being neighbors and a major trading partner, right? If the Canadians would have said, look, if you subsidized us, I think let's take a look, and we will eliminate that. So, and then we would do what is better for the Canadian and American public, right? We could arrive, I think, on a framework which would have been very beneficial to both countries, right? So, I think this is, it's gone about it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think the sitting Prime Minister for Canada, Mark Carney, actually was on record for saying that he will fight the US with force and countermeasures will be lobbed. He went on to say, but he didn't immediately offer details on what it might look like, but it sounds like in Canada, and you've been in this country for a very long time, Frank, has all of a sudden found its fight. It's found the fight and the spirit to become patriotic, to come together, and to perhaps reimagine what its own economic sovereignty could look like, given its greatest trading partner is now putting them on the ropes, putting us on the ropes, if it were. Now, what's amazing, Frank, is I was doing some research and I noticed that the major stock indexes, the markets, not just in America, but around the world, lost approximately as much as 6% on Thursday. And it's on record right now that having lost $3 trillion. It's amazing. I remind myself of Donald Trump was on record once for saying that if a US president were to watch a 1,000-point drop in the stock market, they should be impeached. Well, just today, we've watched the markets open, and it opened at about 1,000 points down. As someone who served on the corporate governance board for NASDAQ, you've got a real good insight on what the stock market means and how people take these numbers. What does it mean to you to see the stock market fall as greatly as it has?
Well, you have to adjust whatever the situation is, right? And so we had factories where our customers went to, right? If the customers went to China, we also had some factories in China or in Europe or in South America. So we adjusted where our customers were, right? And but really, I mean, I've been preaching over and over that we don't make things anymore, right? We just have warehouses. We import everything here, right? Okay, and so you know, if you have a household, you gotta look down the road and say we have to do XXX, that things run reasonable smooth, or that we won't be surprised, right? And the country would have to do the same thing. The country would have to say, what can we do that we be independent, right? That we're not really dependent on anyone, right? And that's being totally neglected, right? Okay, so we lost more and more skilled labor, okay? And you need skilled labor to make things, right? So look, and it's quite obvious too, right? 50 years ago, the slogan was, if you got one of those new computers, you could eliminate a total office floor in a high-riser. And now we have at least 20 times more high-rise buildings than 50 years ago. What did they do in there? Okay, so we don't produce anything. We don't make things. We just regulate, and we try to have financial regulations to so that the country reasonable works. But what we have more and more people which don't make anything. And that won't work.
Well, I'm going to put a pin in the conversation around skilled labor, because we're going to get to why now likely is the best time for your initiative, the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. But we'll put a pin in that, because skilled labor is important. But I want to go back to something that you said around just how we must evolve. Not the words you used, but how I've heard you. Marco Rubio, part of Trump's administration, his Secretary of State, he acknowledged that the markets, quote unquote, are crashing. But check this out, my dear friend. He went on to say that economies weren't crashing. The stock markets were crashing. He went on to say that global businesses would have to adjust to the new environment. When I hear that, I think they don't think. I believe in my heart they don't understand that if you force countries like Canada to evolve, we might actually find our independence. Do you think this is a great catalyst for some of the things that you've been speaking about and being published on for years about strengthening our own economy by focusing within? Do you think that's the counterpoint to what Marco Rubio had said?
Well, I'm not sure that Mark Rubio is the right person to make those statements, right?
That's a good point.
Okay, he has never. So it really boils down that, again, I'm saying 50 years ago, again, Wall Street was pushing business. You got to make more profits. Unions were pushing business, we need higher wages. So what did business do? Business went with all the technologies to China and other places. Huh? Okay, again, we don't make things anymore. And luckily, the States is aware that if they don't make things here, and there would be differences in equality in world politics, etc., and he will come to a war if he can't make things anymore. Can we have fighter jets made in China? Okay, so I think what Donald Trump does is great for America, right? But I think where he slipped a bit, or where I hope he rethinks it, and I hope he would re-amend it. You always want to have great relationships with a neighbor, right? If you have two farms and whatever, it doesn't matter if in a housing, it's great to get along with your neighbors, right? I hope that things will be amended.
You bring a good point. I mean, the spirit of collaboration and cooperating with your neighbors is a long century-old practice of smart business. You made the reference to a farm neighboring another farm. This is where the concept of a mutual fund was actually first originated, where, Frank, if I've got to go and get supplies down at the farm store, and you've got to get supplies down at the farm store, and if we were to go buy them together, we might get ourselves a discount. And we can both, in fact, negotiate that term so we can save a little bit of monies. As you'd say, and I want to quote you, we must reward initiative. This is what you said, Frank. We must reward initiative. Risk-taking and hard work must not be punished. And it feels like we're now entering a phase of economic awareness where success is being penalized left, right, and center. If Donald J. Trump was listening right now to this interview, what would you specifically say to him on his viewpoints of this active tariff war?
Well, what I would say to him is, and I had, over the years, I had many conversations with him. I would say, I fully understand you gotta devise programs that your workers, the U.S. workers, have to supply many jobs, right? Because the whole thing is, it seems like when we had the COVID problems, right? All of a sudden,
the pandemic, the COVID-19.
The pandemic. Governments gave monies to everybody, right? Okay, and it seems now people are kind of that's the way the world should function, right? But we have to realize governments can't give you anything unless they take it away from you first. Okay, so, and when you went to one of the big department stores in America, you didn't see any American products in there anymore. So I think what Donald Trump's doing should have been done 10 years ago, to realize, look, we don't make things anymore.
Right.
Okay, so the key is we gotta start making things, and so hopefully he will realize that call it the allies or the neighbors. He shouldn't have. There should have been differences, right? Okay, because China is a major threat to be the, call it, the global power, right? Okay, and when you look at the, basically it boils down to, we have two economic systems. One is the communistic system, and one is the capitalistic system. And both have problems, right? The communistic system is about 10% of the populations is the military, and another 10% are the super bureaucrats. So the 20% control the 80% in specific terms. Those are the lines. Don't step over the lines. And so freedom is very curtailed, right? And I guess people want to be free. They don't want to be dominant. They don't want to have dictatorships. They don't want to have kingdoms, right? And the super bureaucrats and the military, it's a